Welcome to part 26 of the mod making series for locked loot containers. In this one, I actually started a little bit earlier than I have been in terms of the actual coding part, starting on that today. So that's good because right now I'm actually recording and I got the stuff that I wanted to do for the most part today done. So I'm probably going to make this fairly short and just try to describe what I did, I guess. So as I said, like I was going to do in the last video, I started working on getting the more details of the room evaluation, the room value evaluation things sorted out. Um, and in this case, I've started to filter out specifics of the things that are found. In this case, I just went kind of down the list of sequence here, and I went with the first one being the enemy entities that are detected in that room or whatever you want to call it. And I got this stuff, these methods made, even though I haven't done anything in the other ones, but just to get them there. So I have the method here, as well as the one here. And I'm going to try and do for tomorrow. And then this one for the models, which maybe depending on the speed of it and when, I guess, might get that done tomorrow as well with the billboards, both at the same time, or one done tomorrow and then the other one done the next day or something. Who knows? But either way, today I was able to get at least the base values, ballpark values for the enemy entities that I want for them to modify the room value and such based on what they are and everything. Something I had to change, or maybe not necessarily had to, but I did, is I wanted a different value than the thing I was looking for originally, which is like mobile enemy or something like that. Or no, maybe it was Daggerfall enemy or something. Yeah, Daggerfall enemy or something. And then I was able to turn that into something else. But then today I was like, all right, let me check back at. I don't have it open up right now. It doesn't really matter. Let me check back up at some of my other mods where I've done stuff like this, where I'm able to filter out what type of enemies and everything based on some value. And I found in uh my jewelry additions mod for the actual part where the loot is generated, or yeah, the loot is generated and certain things are modified based on what uh enemy specifically died. Like, say if it was a vampire or a orc or a Daedra Lord or some shit like that. Change what the loot modifiers and stuff would be based on that. For my modded items in this case. And in that, I used a switch case, obviously, but the switch part was checking for enemy entity.career index. As well as just before that, I was checking for enemy entity type equals entity types.enemy class. And that basically is saying, is this a class kind of enemy where it is like a knight, a warrior, an archer, a healer, a sorcerer, rogue, acrobat, all that crap where they're like a class-based kind of enemy, whatever. Humanoid class-based enemy. Um, that is an option, so .enemy class, so I was filtering down with that. And then using the switch for the enemy at the career index, and then basing it off of that. Those values, using those switch cases to change these. And similar deal for the monsters type enemies, not the enemy class, just other monsters, I just did an else after that if, so that if it's not an enemy class, then it's a monster type, which I then put in the switch statement for that, the enemy entity.career index, and then checking the enum values of monster careers instead of class careers. So monster careers is different than class careers. Class careers is like above hundreds and stuff like that, basically in terms of their index or their the int value that they have as their ID basically. And the monsters are things that are below that, like 0 to 42, I think it's for the vanilla enemies. So that's how I did that for the monsters specifically, but in this case I had to get that, I had to take away the Daggerfall enemies thing and then replace it with entity behavior, which then after that I do something that I don't really understand how it works per se, but I've done multiple times and it usually works. Doing enemy entity, yeah, enemy entity equals entity behavior, or getting enemy entity from entity behavior itself, because those are two different types or classes, whatever you want to call it, by doing entity behavior dot entity as enemy entity. I don't know how that works really, but it's some weird shit. I guess they're like similar enough types or something. I don't know. But then I did after that a check for enemy entity is not equal null, just to make sure that that is, you know, won't throw an error kind of thing, and that it's actually there or not. And then I was able to, from that, get the mobile enemy again with the enemy entity.mobile enemy. And then I did the other stuff with that, which doesn't really matter besides the team part here, which I'm able to filter these ones out, city watch and team and player ally and everything. But then after that, I take enemy entity itself, the one that I made up here, or whatever, defined up there, and then use it to do what I just did, where I have enemy entity.career index and the entity type, and then using that to make sure it's an enemy class or a monster class, basically. And then doing all these with these switch cases. Now, the last thing I did was I went through basically all of the vanilla enemies at least. I still have to later on worry about or do for polished parts stuff like modded enemies and possibly future modded enemies, like a more foolproof automated way somehow to do that, but I don't know if I'll be able to do that. I'll just have to see. But at the very least, add in the ones that are currently modded in the game, or there is currently mods for that, and then take those into consideration at the same time. Because otherwise, they'll just get a modifier of 0 as the default. So it's like, yeah. But it'd be cool to have stuff like Minotaurs add to the value, because I think Minotaurs, they're like kind of guardians of certain things in some senses, I guess. Maybe. So having them add a little bit of room value, that would be kind of neat in that sense. But what I was going for here is that positive rune value means that there is a higher chance of a chest being generated, as well as probably higher value chest being generated. The chances are everything. And then negative doing the opposite, reducing the chance of a chest being generated, as well as reducing its value and rarity, that kind of thing. At least the chances of that. And what I did in this case was I made stuff that was like more of the quote-unquote, what would you call it? Like, more towards the either neutral or morally quote-unquote good kind of things, as well as the kind of guardian types that would be like in places like castles, palaces, fortresses, temples, other things like that that are like of the quote-unquote less shady variety, and I made them give a much higher positive modifier for the room value in this case. Stuff like the knights, warriors, battle mages, and then a slightly lesser modifier for ones that are maybe less combat oriented, like mages, healers, rangers, stuff like that, or maybe a little bit less of that kind of guardian archetype. And then the opposite for the more shady or thief type, or less or more morally neutral, or morally quote unquote evil or negative sort of things, more like willing to do stuff like steal and cheat and shit like that. I put that for the ones that are probably less inclined for actually like stealing, maybe, or they're less proficient at it, maybe, with stuff like acrobats, rogues, assassins, barbarians. But then the ones that are more probably proficient at the actual like thieving thing, stuff like thief, burglar, bard. Maybe I just put bard in there, and nightblade, just because I wanted to kind of even all these out somewhat. But yeah, that's the idea there. Like, if you have knights in a place, then probably there's stuff that's valuable there, maybe that's being protected, or they're there to protect some valuables. And then the opposite for the ones, the thieves, like they might have already came through and have been pilfering that any valuables that were there already, or the fact that it is like that they are there shows that maybe it is not very well protected place, stuff like that. So there's probably less valuables hidden. Even yeah, there's probably less valuables hidden, because why would you, if it's a, I don't know. That's the way I'm going for there. And then it's in the similar thing I did for the monsters, essentially, is that like what like rats give a much worse modifier to the overall room value, because I'm like, well, if there's big ass rats in a room or something, that probably is an indication that it's probably not a very well maintained room, or it's pretty much abandoned. There's it's likely already been like pilfered, or the rats have gotten to the stuff, the value, anything valuables or stuff like that. Probably not much of a value in there. So if you got rats, that's the way I'm looking at it, like a rundown kind of place. Similar with these other ones that are a lesser negative modifier, like spiders and giant bats, giants. Maybe I would think that giants would be stealing stuff if they found any, or maybe like just damaging it, crushing it, stuff like that, not taking care of it. Similar stuff with slaughterfish, like, if they're slaughterfish, then that probably means that the place is underwater, so the stuff is probably either screwed up or lesser value because it's been like submerged in water for a long time or whatever. Same thing to a lesser extent for these other ones, grizzly bears, animals. And then we get to stuff where it actually starts adding a positive modifier, like stuff that I'd imagine maybe valuables would be there potentially, like potentially stuff that would be there as a guardian for something, possibly, such as imps, slightly better orc ranks like orc sergeants, maybe a ghost, maybe it's a vengeful spirit to some degree, and it's like the owner that became that ghost or something maybe had valuables there or some shit, I don't know. Dragonlings. Same deal with the slightly higher one here, with stuff like skeletal warriors. Maybe they're summoned or brought back or whatever, conjured to protect something. Stuff like similar to Daedroths, or maybe vampires would be around, stuff that might have more value. Exact same idea with the Atronax here. Orc shamans, higher rank and everything. Wraiths, similar way. And then the even higher, you got stuff like mummies, gargoyles, which I would generally consider as things that would be there for guarding stuff. The higher ranking Daedras, Iron Atronax, Lamias, because I figure Lamias are like, maybe they're those kind of creatures that would be like, they enjoy treasure or something, I don't know. At the very least, maybe using it as bait to get people there or something so they could kill them or do whatever the hell they do. And then the final one would be the modifiers for the higher ranking stuff. That would probably have like higher level stuff that would possibly have their own horde of their own or something like that of loot and gold and valuables and everything, or just general higher class things. Um, and then the Dragonling alternate, because I think, like, dragons, they have hordes of treasure and stuff. This being the Dragonling that only shows up for the quest. That probably wouldn't even become a factor, but I figured why not. But yeah, that's what I did for the filtering out the enemies and how they will evaluate into that home room value equation, or how the odds of certain chests appearing at all and what their rarity will be and their value and everything, how that will be affected in some way by these, potentially affected by these room value modifiers and everything. Context. But yeah, I did that for the basics part of the vanilla enemies today, and hopefully tomorrow I can do the same thing for the billboard flat object decorations and stuff, as well as the models and everything, which might take more time because there's more of them, but I'll see. I might filter them in a less precise kind of way than the enemies, where it's like, just this archive itself, depending on what it is, go by that or something. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say, I guess. I'm glad I got some stuff done today, which is cool, and a little bit earlier than I did last time, but yeah. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.